The In Conversation podcast series with author Nigel Beckles.
Welcome to the podcast.
Get ready for takeoff.
Welcome back to my In Conversation podcast series. My guest for this episode is the CEO of Father Figure Children and Family Services, David Mullings. Greetings, David. Welcome to my podcast series. How are you?
I'm well, thank you very much, Nigel. And how are you?
I'm very well, busy. So, David, what have you been up to recently?
Well, Nigel, I mean, you know, the current circumstances that we're in, I think for a lot of people, probably been a bit of a slowdown. I think it's actually had the opposite effect for me. It's been business as usual, in all honesty, for me. And apart from obviously the tragic side of COVID-19 for some family, friends, and things like that, outside of that, it's been an enjoyable time for me to actually just be focused and being able to refocus on the work that I'm doing and pushing it as much as I can. So just, you know, busy with work and keeping the pressure, keeping the pedal to the floor, so to speak.
Well, talking about work, you began the organisation Father Figure Children. What inspired you to start that organisation?
There's a few factors that were involved in that. I worked for a charity, a children's charity, which had provided various services, and I was actually there with it's a bit of a tricky story, but in a nutshell, I got a job in a very unorthodox way, which involved me working with fathers within children's centres, or what were then known as Sure Start centres, which were brought in by the Labour government. And my role was what they called a father's worker. And then good old austerity measures came in, and the role that I had was one of the first roles to be cut. And that left me mentally and emotionally very just like, I couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that this important, what I felt was really important work was going to just be cut. And then from another part, I'd never been in a position where actually I didn't know when I was going to be earning money again, that my money was going to be stopped in 4 weeks' time. So I decided that this work needed to continue. And I think that came from the fact that, I mean, come from a two-parent family. Parents are still married 50-odd years even now. But I started to reflect on my growing up and my peers and looking at some of those issues and realizing that, you know, a lot of my peers that had maybe not been as successful as some of the other ones, some who had got involved in real serious crime or been victims to serious crime, they were guys who didn't have fathers in their life or positive male role models, father figures, so to speak. And as a result of that, I felt that it was necessary that I continued in some way, shape or form supporting fathers, and that's how Father Figure was born. I had no idea what I would really go on to do as a organization, but I just knew that I needed to continue doing some kind of work to support fathers.
So when and where did you set up the organization?
So what happened was, in all honesty, I was made redundant, and I actually was re-employed by the charity within a couple of weeks. So, but the feeling that I spoke to you about, that I just mentioned, it didn't go away. And so in that time, I came up with this name, Father Figure, and asked a friend of mine to create me a logo, and decided some months later that I was going to do an event for fathers on Father's Day in 2011. Had this event, had a couple of hundred people, or maybe just under a couple of hundred people turn up in the local area, and it got some newspaper coverage. And then I got a call some months later by a manager of a children's centre saying, hey, you know, we've seen your interview, saw the work you did. We're looking to do something for fathers. Would you do something with us? Of course I would. Of course I would, I said. And you know, did a collaborative event, which happened actually to be for Black History Month, but for fathers. And then an opportunity came within the borough of Brent, where they were looking to do some work with fathers. And I got this call one day from someone saying that they were given my details and was told that I was the person to contact. And I mean, I can't probably, for non-disclosure reasons, I can't probably give you all the details of how it works. But let's say for 3 weeks in a row, I was given a call by the same person. These calls were so substantial, I was able to leave my full-time employment because I realized that what they wanted me to be able to do for them, it was going to open doors as such that I would not be able to work in the way that I was working if I was going to be able to do that. So I took that opportunity, and that meant that I was, providing consultative services within the borough of Brent and setting up services and delivering some of those services too. So essentially, I started my work as a consultant, but also delivering services in the borough of Brent, where I still have a contract doing some work still to today. So that's where I started my work, I would say.
And how long ago was that then? What year was that?
So that was in 2011. So this in 2020, we Father Figure celebrates 9 years.
So what type of issues does your organisation tackle? What kind of things do you deal with?
So if I talk about the work I do for Brent currently, what I would say is originally the work that I did for Brent, or part of the earlier part of the work I did in Brent, was to set up services across children's centres that would allow fathers and children to engage. And that was across what is known as early years. So early years is known as birth to 5 years old. And so what I set up would allow fathers and children a little bit actually older than the age of 5, because what we recognise is sometimes we'd have fathers who'd have a 2 or maybe a 4 or 5 year old who was going to a 5-year-old who's going to be getting too old for what we were delivering, but then they've had a 2-year-old they've had a newborn, and essentially it's like they've renewed their contract. And then we didn't want to say, well, actually you can come with the newborn, but you can't come with the 5+-year-old. So that was the first part of my work. But now, and actually not just now, but the work I am still doing, is I take referrals from social services or early years practitioners who may be working with families who are known to them for various reasons. And so this could be what we call parents that are maybe just at a level 2. And when we say level 2, explain the jargon, all families kind of operate at what we call a level 2. But you might just be struggling with something. You might be having a few issues here and there. But then you've got higher level child protection, children in need, which is social care level. And so I could be working with a father who has used physical chastisement to discipline his child, to a father who's got a real bad relationship with the mother of his child, maybe even used abuse within that relationship, to a father who's actually not engaging enough and not doing enough with the child. So, I get a wide range of referrals from men. And ultimately, I do one-to-one work with those guys to try and encourage them and get them to a place that is going to be of benefit to their children. That's the work I'm doing in Brent. Another piece of work I do would be my core advocacy work, where I'm supporting men who have lost contact with children to regain contact with their children through the legal process.
So why did you choose to support fathers with various issues?
I think what I realised when I started to do the work that I was doing is that there was a real lack of understanding for fathers and their needs and what they needed or how to support them. Working in children and family services is a very female-dominated field. And so with that can actually come some prejudgment and some biases. And so what I realised is that sometimes fathers were being given the right information, but they weren't receiving it because of the way it was being given to them. And I realized that a lot of the time they just were not being worked with in a way that was conducive and helpful, and just actually quite overlooked. If we think about the word parents, we don't think about fathers. We should do, but in general, you look at any services that says it's for parents, you'll go and see that it's very female dominated, be it the people presenting the service or the people receiving the service. And, I just felt that it was a great injustice to children, not to fathers. My work is not about flying the flag blindly for fathers. It is really about how we support children and how we... And I felt that if we're not supporting fathers, then how can we say we're supporting children? Children didn't get here on their own. And if you're gonna give a child the best opportunity in life, then they need two positive parents supporting them, whether that relationship's broken or not. They need, the way I would explain it is, and the way I talk to parents about it is, when you see new trees being planted, you don't just see that tree sitting there on its own. You never see a brand new tree that's been planted just sitting in a bit of soil. It will have wooden stakes, normally 2, sometimes 1, sometimes even 3, strapped to that tree to make sure that tree grows straight. Yeah? So, the saying, bend the tree when it's young so it can grow the way you want it to. And so it's very important that we have 2 parents. I think if we're dealing with one parent issues, if we're dealing with issues and we're only dealing with mum, I think what we're saying is that she's potentially the creator of the problem, and the only person that can fix the problem. And we're letting fathers off the hook. Fathers are being let off the hook by mothers and by services when we don't engage them. And we're letting children down. Never mind the effect of adults, we're letting down children by not pursuing the support and engagement of fathers.
So how do you tackle a situation where a father does not want to engage with his child or children?
I've got no magic wand for that. I can't make a man, want to love or be involved in his child's life. However, what I am willing to do is have the conversation and challenge and kind of put some things to this person. Often, I think my experience has been that often got feelings that are being carried over from the breakdown of the relationship, and those are skewing the ability of this man to really concentrate on his job and role and what that should be, which is to support his child. A relationship should not be dependent on him being in a relationship with the mother of his child. I kind of put it like a triangle, with the child at the tip of the triangle, and you got a parent at the bottom, mum on the left, dad on whatever side, dad on the other side. There should be a constant connection from the parent to the child, regardless of the base between mother and father. That connection, there should always be a connection from that child to both those people. And I will have those type of conversations. I will talk about what research tells us about children who are not being supported by 2 parents, the fact that they're likely to be more engaged in early sexual activity, drugs, alcohol, potential for their education to not be as good. And obviously we know that's not a rule of thumb, all right? But the chance, this is research facts, it's not my opinion. Research facts is that children who are not having two positive male parents in their life are more likely to fall foul to those things. So, those are the kind of conversations I'll have with a man. But essentially, if he's hell-bent on not actually being a father, it might actually be the better thing that he's not involved, because him being involved could actually be more destructive than not being involved.
I understand that your organisation provides workshops as part of your services. What type of issues do your workshops facilitate?
I mean, the workshops are generally stuff that may be commissioned by schools or maybe a children's centre, or also there's one on positive discipline. It's a relatively short workshop, in all honesty, a couple of hours. Positive discipline, what we call positive discipline, how you discipline children in a positive way and get the best out of them by praising them and giving them positive attention. I have one on transition from primary to secondary, which I think is a big, I think you often see things, maybe schools put things in place for children who are transitioning from primary to secondary, but they're not actually dealing with parents. And I think there's a tendency in my experience for parents to take their foot off the pedal when children are going into secondary school, because they feel like they're a lot more independent and they can kind of start to manage themselves better. And I'm kind of advocating that actually this is a time for you to get a tighter grip and be more involved, because we know that, we generally don't take children to school. We don't see parents at the school gate, and it's just kind of preparing parents for what is happening nowadays. If you're of a certain age, then you may not even have an understanding for what is going on for young people. And even if you're not quite of a certain age, things are changing so fast. There's an opportunity for parents, to just look at some of the issues around things they should be looking at, things how you should be managing communication with the school, for example, because it's not the same as primary school. Primary school, you can rock up. Can I see Miss Blah Blah? Okay, just hang on a minute. At the end of the school day, you can't do that at secondary school. And if you've not got a child who's been through secondary education, then that's something that might be a bit of a shock to the system, dealing with heads of year, head of departments. You're not having conversations with the head of the school. You're going to have 2 or 3, maybe 4 conversations before you even get close to the head teacher. So just preparing parents for that. I think there's one we do on access contact, which is about similar, as I mentioned, the work I do with helping guys through the process. And I should say that, naturally, given the name of the organization, 99% of my clients, I should say, are men. But I have supported women as well in that process. For me, my ethos it's about the child. And if I feel that it's morally, that what has been presented to me is morally correct, then I will always support a person where I can. So I do a workshop on access. That's just to kind of maybe give men that information in a group setting as opposed to one-to-one. Through my website, you can always book a free consultation, and essentially a visual version of what I would speak to anyone who contacted me about that issue. The workshop is a visual and more interactive because there may be a number of men, so there may be more questions asked. It's a bigger version of that. And I also actually I actually train social workers around how they engage, their engagement of fathers, how they engage fathers, how they can actually change their approach to get more successful results with how they engage men and fathers in their work.
I also understand you work with men who have a tendency to be abusive to their partners. How did you get involved in that type of work?
I've spoken about my court work, and I was doing court work, and essentially, if I'm honest with you, I realized that I think when I was along my journey, I realized I need another string in my bow. There was a lot of domestic violence going on. Wasn't something I paid overly too much attention to, but I just realized that it was becoming a bit of a theme whilst I was on my journey. So I pursued just getting into the work, because I know actually for myself, I had my own personal feelings towards men who I was aware used domestic abuse or violence within their relationships. I had a view on that. And actually, I realized that view could quite easily affect my work. And I realized that actually I had a string missing. I couldn't. A lot of my cases that I was being presented with had an element of abuse involved. And how was I going to really tackle that apart from my moral feelings towards that? I felt like I needed some tools to be able to actually work with men. And so that was what directed me down that path of working with perpetrators. And also I think it's important, because actually, I say this all the time, if we are not supporting perpetrators, dominators, men who use abusive behavior, whichever one you prefer of those 3 or 4 I just said, if we are not supporting them to change their behavior, then what's the point? What's the point of us only supporting victims to move on and to flee and to recognize the behavior? We're not actually really doing anything. I've grown up on the premise that prevention is better than cure. And so if we're just constantly curing, well, it's a big circle. All we're doing is moving this man, or if it's a woman who's the perpetrator, we're just moving them on to someone else for them to perpetrate their behavior again and again and create this disaster that it leaves, the trail that it leaves again and again. And so for me, it was like, well, actually, we need to try and prevent this. We need to help people to change their behavior. So that was how I got into doing that type of work.
And what other interests do you have, David?
I'm not sure. I think I'm just one for social justice. I think outside of the fact that I do like a bit of football, I'm a football fan. I don't party. I'm not a party person. I used to be a DJ, and I've done a lot of partying in my time. I've knocked that on the head some time ago, and believe it or not, sold all my records, which people can't believe, but made a great investment, and I don't regret it. And in any case, things have changed so quickly that actually I probably have my record collection and more sitting on a hard drive in my office. So hey, I think it was a great decision personally. But I just think I'm one for social justice, to be honest, and all things that revolve around that. And yeah, my children and my family are important to me, of course. And, you know, I've got two older children and two younger children, 14 and 17, my younger children are. So, you know, it's about getting them through their education and getting them on the right path. Yeah, I don't think I've got anything else really more exciting to talk about in terms of what else I'm into. I think I'm more recently with Father Figure, I've created, COVID times have helped me to create a new service called Men Talking, the acronym being Men, Mental, Talking and King, and it's, you know, it's been going strong now for over 2 months. We bunch of men meet up online at 7:30 on a Wednesday evening. We discuss various subjects, and that has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, and it's been very powerful. I've learned a lot from it, and I think the men that are coming on are learning a lot too. But yeah, interests, I don't know. Outside of, I do like sports. I tell you, I do like sports. But outside of that, social justice, my family, sports, social justice, that's me. There's not much more to it. You and I could speak, because you know, we have spoken a little bit now, and I can see we have very similar in terms of conversations. We could talk forever on those kind of issues. So yeah, I think that's me.
Indeed, we could. So, David, what is on your bucket list? What are your plans for the future?
Bucket list. If we talk about personal, family, I'm looking forward to my younger children. My older, one of my daughters, she's a teacher. One's pursuing law, and you know, has just finished university, awaiting results. But I'm no doubt she will be coasting and probably going on to law school. So apart from that, obviously my younger boys, getting them through school, university, getting them, I think it's important for me that my children are on the path of independence and in the right place, right frame of mind, good citizens to the world, good people. I think that's probably the most important thing for me. In terms of my work, I think that I'd like to grow the work that I do. I want to develop some more training around the work that I do so that I can empower and support other men to do the work that I do, so that they can support and the work that I do can grow, and that more men can be supported within their roles. I think all I'll say is IBA. I won't say anything more than that, because it's such a small thing, and it's at the moment, and it's got to be a bit tight-lipped at the moment. But all I'll say is the IBA. Maybe one day you'll be able to give your listeners a bit more context to the IBA.
You'll be the man to provide the context, my friend. So the
yeah, I'm happy to come back on and talk about the IBA, but that would be a challenge for me. So it's got to be at a certain place before I can speak about it and even describe and give the full meaning to that acronym. But IBA.
The IBA is on your bucket list and obviously one of your fledgling projects. So, David, how can people contact you?
I'm contactable via my website, which is fatherfigure.org.uk. You can always go on there and book whether it's a consultation or just an inquiry. You'll be given you'll be able to access my calendar. I will contact you at any time that you wish to speak to me. I am on social media platforms, but I am getting to an age where that doesn't necessarily come to the forefront of my mind. So I think on Twitter I am ffigure, on Twitter at ffigure, so that's F for Freddy. I believe that on Instagram I am fatherfigure_4 children, and on Facebook fatherfigure, one word, 4 children, second word. And I hope I've got that right.
I'm sure people will be able to find you if they need to find you, David. So, David, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please join me for another In Conversations podcast very soon for more interesting and entertaining discussions. Stay safe.